Maintenance worker. Elena Vasquez had been scrubbing the crystalline floors of the imperial palace for 3 standard months, invisible to the towering Zethrakian nobility who glided past her on their 6 legs like living shadows. The job paid, enough to send credits back to the human colony on Kepler 442b, where her younger brother was studying to become a medic. That was all that mattered. The Zethrakians stood nearly 3 meters tall, their obsidian exoskeletons gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with their emotions. Emperor Kethron IX was the most imposing of all. His carapace bore golden veins that pulsed with ancient authority, and his 4 eyes could freeze a lesser being's soul with a glance. Elena had learned to move like smoke through the palace corridors, completing her work without drawing attention. The Zethrakians barely acknowledged human existence, considering them useful but unremarkable creatures, good for menial labor and little else. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning, in the Emperor's private garden. Elena was polishing the bioluminescent water features when she heard it, a soft, distressed chirping coming from behind the towering flame moss trees. Against her better judgment, she investigated. What she found made her breath catch in her throat. A small creature no larger than a house cat cowered beneath a cluster of crystal formations. It looked like a miniature dragon from human mythology, with iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to silver, tiny wings that fluttered frantically, and large, intelligent eyes filled with terror. But this wasn't what made Elena's heart race. 3 Zethrakian palace guards surrounded the creature, their weapons drawn, energy crackling at the tips of their neural disruptors. "The pest has contaminated the Emperor's sanctuary," hissed one guard, his bioluminescent patterns flashing angry red. "Protocol demands immediate extermination." "Wait," Elena found herself saying before she could stop herself. 6 alien eyes turned toward her, surprise flickering across their features. Humans didn't speak unless spoken to. Humans certainly didn't interrupt Zethrakian military operations. "The cleaning slave speaks?" The lead guard's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Return to your duties, inferior being. This does not concern you." But Elena stepped forward, positioning herself between the weapons and the terrified creature. "You can't kill it." The guard's pattern shifted to deep purple, the color of outrage. "You dare interfere with... What is the meaning of this disturbance?" The voice boomed across the garden like thunder. Emperor Kethron IX materialized from the shadows, his massive form radiating authority and barely contained fury. His golden veins pulsed so brightly, they cast shadows on the crystal formations. The guards immediately prostrated themselves. "Your Magnificence, we discovered this pest in your private sanctuary. We were disposing of it when the human slave inexplicably interfered." The Emperor's 4 eyes fixed on Elena, who somehow found the courage to remain standing despite every instinct screaming at her to run. Behind her, the small creature had gone silent, pressing itself against her legs. "Explain yourself, human," the Emperor commanded, his voice like the grinding of continents. Elena's mouth went dry, but she forced the words out. "Your Magnificence, this creature. It's not a pest, it's a Stellaris drake. They're incredibly rare, almost extinct. They only appear in places of great natural power." She gestured to the garden around them. "It chose your sanctuary because it recognizes the strength of your presence. In human mythology, such creatures only bond with those destined for greatness." The Emperor's bioluminescent patterns shifted to curious gold. "You know of such things? I studied xenobiology before." Elena hesitated, then continued. "Before economic necessity brought me here. Stellaris drakes are said to live for millennia. They're incredibly intelligent and loyal. If one has chosen your garden, it's because it senses something extraordinary about you." Emperor Kethron IX moved closer, his massive form casting Elena in shadow. She could smell the ozone scent of his bioelectric field, could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on her, but she didn't move. The small drake peeked out from behind Elena's legs, its large eyes fixed on the Emperor. For a long moment, the garden was absolutely silent. Then something unprecedented happened. The Stellaris drake took a tentative step toward the Emperor, its scales shifting to match the golden patterns on his carapace. It began to purr, a sound like distant thunder mixed with crystal chimes. Emperor Catherine IX knelt slowly, extending one massive claw. The drake approached fearlessly and nuzzled against it, its purr growing louder. "Impossible," whispered one of the guards. "No creature has ever—" "The human speaks truth," the Emperor said, his voice filled with wonder. His patterns had shifted to warm silver, an emotion Elena had never seen from a Zethrakian. "This small being, I can sense its ancient wisdom, its power." He looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. "You risked your life to protect something you barely knew. Why?" Elena felt her courage returning. "Because sometimes the smallest things are the most precious, your magnificence. And because courage isn't about size or strength. It's about doing what's right, even when you're afraid." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, the drake now contentedly curled around his forearm. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new note, something that sounded almost like approval. "Guards, you will spread word throughout the palace. This human is no longer a maintenance worker. She is now keeper of the imperial menagerie, with all privileges that position entails." His four eyes fixed on Elena. "And the first member of her collection shall be this Stellaris drake, who will be known as Courage, named for the one who saved its life." As the guards departed in stunned silence, Emperor Catherine IX studied Elena with new interest. "Perhaps," he mused, watching the drake playfully spiral around his arm, "we have underestimated your species. Any being capable of such bravery and wisdom deserves our attention." Elena smiled, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Sometimes she realized being human wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest. Sometimes it was simply about having the courage to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. The small dragon purred in agreement, its scales shimmering like starlight in the alien garden where everything had changed.